Welcome back to another Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep dive into an unforgettable historical disaster. One that didn't just level a metropolis, but believe it or not, actually forged modern architecture as we know it. I'm talking about the Great Chicago Fire. So, let's unpack exactly how a bustling, thriving city was reduced to ashes literally overnight. Have you ever wondered how one single night changed the future of an entire American city forever? It's a fascinating question, right? We're going to explore the incredible story of October 8th, 1871. On that specific evening, Chicago looked like any other busy American hub. You've got streets filled with horse-drawn wagons, families settling in for dinner, local businesses closing up for the night. Nobody walking those streets had any idea that within just a few hours, thousands of buildings would be completely gone. That ordinary, bustling evening was about to give way to unimaginable destruction. So, let's start with Section 1, a city made of wood. To really grasp this, you have to picture Chicago at the time. It was a booming metropolis, absolutely one of the fastest-growing cities in the U.S., with a population hitting over 300,000 people. It was this massive hub of opportunity, drawing people in from all over the place. But here's the catch. To keep up with that explosive population growth, the city had to build fast. And more importantly, they had to build cheap. And that right there was a recipe for disaster, hidden in plain sight. I mean, think about this combination. You had wooden houses, wooden stores, even wooden sidewalks. Incredibly, the actual roads were paved with wood blocks. It was kind of this cheap trick used to lift the streets out of Chicago's notoriously muddy swamp terrain. Now combine all that wood with an unusually hot and dry summer. They had gone months with barely a drop of rain. The trees, the grass, those endless blocks of wooden buildings, they'd just been baking in the sun until they were as dry as paper. The entire city was quite literally a giant pile of kindling. Which brings us to Section 2, the spark and the myth. Now, for generations, people completely believed this devastating fire started with a single clumsy farm animal. You've probably heard it, Catherine O'Leary's cow kicking over a lantern in a barn. It's a super vivid image, right? Well, actually, scratch that. Historians now firmly believe this famous story was just a total myth, cooked up by newspapers who were desperate for a scapegoat. The reality, the exact origin remains a complete mystery. We honestly might never know who or what ignited that first flame on that fateful Sunday night. Moving on to Section 3, the unstoppable inferno. Regardless of how that very first spark happened, things almost immediately spiraled into a total catastrophe. Now, you might be wondering, where were the firefighters? Well, they rushed to the scene, sure, but they were already completely exhausted. They'd actually spent hours fighting another massive fire just the night before. And on top of being totally physically drained, there was a critical, fatal delay because of widespread confusion over where this new fire actually was. By the time the weary crews finally showed up and got set up, it was too late. The fire had just gained way too much ground. Let's track this timeline, because the rapid escalation here is just terrifying. Sunday night, the spark ignites. But within just a few hours, the blaze did the unthinkable. It jumped the Chicago River. Now, people previously thought the water would act as this natural fire break, but the river was so heavily polluted with grease and industrial waste that the surface of the water itself actually caught on fire. Wild, right? The fierce winds just carried burning debris right across the water, igniting the opposite side. This allowed the inferno to spread even faster, and it raged totally unchecked for nearly 2 straight days, until heavy rain finally arrived on October 10th. And we have to talk about what it was actually like on the ground, because the sheer sensory terror was unimaginable. Witnesses didn't just describe a fire, they called it a roaring tornado. The heat from these burning city blocks was so intense that it literally bent iron. It cracked structural bricks in half. It even caused glass windows to explode outward. People said the sound was absolutely deafening, mimicking a violent roaring storm of pure heat and destruction. It was absolute chaos out there. Entire neighborhoods were simply vanishing in a sea of fire. Families had to just grab whatever they could physically carry and flee through these smoke-filled streets with horses running wildly all around them. This forced thousands of panicked people to gather helplessly along the shores of Lake Michigan. They were just hoping the open water would protect them from the relentless heat. They stood on that shoreline while thick, suffocating black smoke completely blocked out the sun. It literally turned daylight into an eerie darkness. And that leads us to Section 4, the aftermath of ashes. So the nightmare finally ended on October 10th when a heavy rainstorm succeeded where those exhausted firefighters couldn't, slowly putting out the remaining flames. But when the smoke cleared, the scale of loss was just almost beyond comprehension. The numbers are just staggering. More than 17,000 buildings were entirely wiped off the map. Around 100,000 people were left instantly homeless. To put that into perspective, that was a full one-third of Chicago's entire population. They lost absolutely everything they owned. And most tragically of all, hundreds of people lost their lives in the blaze. The physical and emotional toll was just staggering.
Finally, Section 5, Rebirth of a City. You know, it would have been so easy to just abandon the charred remains of the city. But history isn't just about disasters, right? It's about the people who refuse to give up. Instead of walking away, Chicago orchestrated a triumphant resurrection. Step 1. A flood of architects, engineers, and laborers from all across America united. They moved to the city to help design a stronger, safer Chicago. Step 2. They ended the era of cheap wooden infrastructure forever. They brought in strict new building codes, demanding durable materials like stone, brick, and steel. And Step 3. From those new steel frameworks came an absolute global revolution, the invention of the modern skyscraper. Chicago literally transformed its ashes into a worldwide symbol of innovation, and it forever changed urban architecture.
It's incredible to think that today, millions of visitors walk right through downtown Chicago's towering skyline without even realizing they're standing on ground that was once completely leveled by fire. The Great Chicago Fire is remembered not just for the devastating loss, but for what was actually rebuilt afterward. It goes to show that even after unimaginable tragedy, determination, courage, and hope can create something even greater than before. So I'll leave you with this. Next time you walk among the skyscrapers of downtown Chicago, or really any modern city for that matter, ask yourself, how can we apply this incredible human resilience to the massive challenges we face today? Thanks for joining me for this explainer. I hope this deep dive gave you a whole new perspective on how history is built.